I've
record
got it. I've
button.
got it. It's recording now.
Oh, cool. Hi, Graham, by the way. All right.
Hello, good to see
So
you.
you're recording, Darren?
I am recording.
All right. I'll try to go back to quiet mode. Bye.
That lasted 4 minutes, by the way. Okay, so backup recovery. So that's the high level contents. The warning here is recovery. But the reason, I'll go back a slide second. The reason we have 7 prevention bullet points and 1 recovery bullet point is because you really don't want to get to the recovery stage if you can help it. Recovery can take, greater than 6 weeks, and I would say almost all of them I've been involved in have been many months in recovery. Starting anywhere between 6 weeks up to a full 6 to 9 months. And that's to get everything back in place and everything working. Paying the ransom is a different minefield altogether. There's an entire business around paying ransoms now. That once it's in the press that you've been ransomware, you get lots of calls from snaky lawyers who can help connect you to the ransomware groups and then help you possibly get the price down. You don't want to get there. That's not where you want to end up. And simple actions now can prevent an attack completely, or even shave weeks off the recovery or months. And anytime I say recovery and prevention, right, you're going to save tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars if you prevent this, because prevention is the key. So antivirus is really your last line of defense. I'm talking about that first because it is the last line. Old school doesn't cut it anymore. The old way was signature based. It had to be an exact match. Your definitions were coming from on premise. Your management was on premises. It was slow to update. How do you now manage off-LAN endpoints? COVID has made a whole lot of what was on LAN off LAN in the last year. So how do you now get to them to make sure they're patched? Are you relying on a VPN? So I might be surfing at home or doing stuff at home, but not necessarily on a VPN. So how old are my definitions? Who knows? You don't enable new features. We see this all the time, either because you haven't read the manual, RTFM, or because of performance. You've turned something on, it affected a whole slew of users, so you turned it back off because security impacts performance. We're going to talk about that in a second as well. The new way, it's behavior based, heuristics, if you will, was the word bandied about a few years ago by the McAfees and the semantics. Really, that's what is this process doing, and should it be doing it? And it's usually cloud-based. It might be a hybrid, it might be cloud and some on-prem, but cloud-based gets a lot of advantages which the cloud can do. You get fast updates. Off-LAN endpoints are now happy because even if I'm at Starbucks or at home on my personal Wi-Fi, if I'm not VPN'd in, I'm still getting the policies and the definitions from a cloud-based vendor at that point. They also have machine learning coming in and doing some really interesting stuff now. And they have EDR, which is the next facet of this, is how do you recover and how do you respond? That's what EDR is. So you can see the full trace of an attack, or even if it's a false positive, you can decide quite easily. And you get new features quite a lot. The one I deal with a lot is Bitdefender, and they're rolling out new features all the time in their cloud products. Speed matters too. So, again, an off computer is 100% secure, and also a computer that has 45 different security products might be as secure as you can make it, but it's probably got really poor performance. I'm going to pick on Malwarebytes here. They're not the only ones. They're the ones I've seen that have a general adverse effect. Malwarebytes, don't get me wrong, if I'm in the middle of a ransomware attack, I'm going to go and buy Malwarebytes, and they will charge you an arm and a leg to do it because it will stop it in its tracks when it's going around your network. However, it's going to slow your system to a crawl because of the way Malwarebytes works. It looks at absolutely everything all the time, and it needs another product too. It needs a classic antivirus below it, so you end up with 2 security products scanning the same files at the same time. So, you do the math, and that doesn't end well for your IO. And productivity and usability sacrificed in the name of security. You end up with unhappy users, pressure gets applied, features get disabled, protection gets reduced. Hey, but it's fast. So all that money you've just spent is gone away because all the new features you turned on now you've turned off because you got in trouble by your management and your users are all bitching. The new ones. So I'm going to show you a screenshot later on. This is not just this is not just the ones I like. These are the ones that generally do pretty good. So Bitdefender, Sentinel-1, WebRoot. We do use the first two. We use Bitdefender and Sentinel-1 quite a lot. They're fast, which is important on endpoints. You know, you don't want what Intel giveth away, McAfee taketh away, right? You don't want to get into that where you're getting all of these super fast processors, but the security system is so overheady that it takes away all of the production gains that you get. And also add endpoint detection and response to the solution if you can. It's going to solve. It's going to help you a lot in the long run trying to figure out what's false and what's not. So not only does speed matter, but detection rate probably matters even more than speed. Solely relying on signature matches, as I mentioned earlier, is now bad. The 0 days are coming and going with quite spectacular frequency these days. Add to that, viruses evolve quickly. The source code of a virus is available on the dark web. You can buy them, you change them. That is now a new signature. That theoretically could be a new 0 day, right? Off you go, rinse and repeat, as it's happened for the past 30 years in IT. Heuristics, again, which is behavior, is really the better way of doing it. I'm not saying you need really both, but this is the new way. So what is an application doing? Is if I open Word and Word suddenly tries to send out hundreds and hundreds of emails, is that normal? And the answer would be no. And most of these now heuristic engines understand that kind of behavior, that these programs should not be doing what some of the malware gets it to try and do. Also, a few years ago, right, the antivirus manufacturers all thought they could spot a ransomware attack by looking at the lots of writes on disks, on SANs, especially on the big file servers. We're beyond that now. That does not work. Lots of writes is not a detection mechanism. You need something else. So what do you choose? Well, there's a $1 million question, right? Because if you choose wrong, then you're back to square one. You're being whacked again. So what do you choose, right? I always tell people, right, there's a couple of resources on the web, AV comparatives, AV test, virus bull. And I like AV comparatives a lot. Again, we use Sentinel-1, Bitdefender, and still we use semantic endpoint protection on our servers. So you can go out and look at these resources and make some decisions based on data, right? We're not fully in a post-fact world yet. There are still some data points you can use to figure stuff out. So here's an example of AV comparatives. And it has two different kinds of site. It has consumer AV and enterprise AV. So this is the enterprise AV. When I created this presentation back in December, this was the latest screenshot. I don't know if there's one out there. I haven't checked this month, but this was from like December the 5th, maybe, I think is when I pulled this down. And you can see what the real world detection rates are for these products. And you can now start to make decisions, maybe not on 1 quarter's or 1 month's results, but you can go back and you can look at these over time and see which ones historically have really good detection rates in real world scenarios, not just lab created bullshit. And again, pick and choose, take the data and go look at that. You'll always see Kaspersky be good. There's a lot of agencies, all government agencies, and some big companies will not touch Kaspersky because of its potential ties to Russia, but still it does do really good, as does Bitdefender, as does Sentinel-1. You won't see all the vendors in here all of the time because some of them get a bit pissy and take their toys and go away. But it's also interesting from a advertising point. So you'll see CrowdStrike a lot. You'll see Carbon Black. Carbon Black is the last one on the right, which is VMware. That's the two that are spending an awful lot of money to convince you, them and FireEye too, to convince you that they're the best thing since sliced bread. Well, maybe they are, but in a real world test, they're not doing too well. So they can spend all the money in the world they want to convince your CIO, CISO, and anyone else that would spend budget. But the fact of the matter is, they may not be as good as they say they are. And this at least gives you some evidentiary proof to show that. One of the interesting things about this is that Microsoft, which is about 5 or 6 in from the right, has trended pretty good over the last couple of years with Microsoft Defender. They bought that from, I think it was a Romanian company, which is also where Bitdefender comes from, is Romania. So Romania is doing some good stuff. I'm still not sure I would trust Microsoft with my enterprise data going back to the whole, I prefer it to be heterogeneous. And Microsoft Windows Defender did just actually get hit with a 0 day. So they're not perfect, but they are better than most. And if you don't have anything, they're better than nothing. But these products now are starting to add in a whole lot more than just antivirus. So this is Bitdefender's Gravity Zone Ultra, which is what we work with a fair bit now. And this flagged this registry event in the background here that you can see on the top image and shows you exactly what this registry entry was doing. It adds a whole slew of tools to your arsenal. So when it sees something like this happening, it's sitting in the background and it'll actually take an image of the screen when the person clicks on something. And so we've had occasions where we had a user open an email and open a Word document, and in the Word document click the link, and then they clicked the link and it downloaded something and they ran it. Bitdefender stopped it and took screenshots of each one of those actual events. And the user said, I didn't open the email. Well, there's a picture of you opening an email. Oh, well, I didn't open the attachment. There's a picture of you opening the attachment. Oh, the conversation went on like that for about 5 minutes. And it wasn't her fault. She shouldn't be expected to know that it's bad. It came through, right? It's difficult for users to tell. I'm not saying the user's wrong, but you now have evidence here whether it was good or bad on the back screenshot there. The front screenshot is something that you're starting to see them add now. Is gone beyond antivirus and then now saying, hey, you have misconfigured endpoints. Maybe they're not vulnerable. They don't have missing patches, but patches are only one part of this. There are a whole lot of patches in Microsoft and in group policies that come down, but if you might have installed the Windows update, but you haven't changed the registry setting to enable the patch. This is very common in most environments where you think you're fully patched, but you haven't actually turned the features on because Microsoft won't or can't because it'll impact so many customers. So they're adding these features in, and it's intriguing to watch it metamorphosize from just antivirus to being a kind of a wholesale security dashboard, if you will. Cybersecurity awareness, which is really user training, because your users are walking, talking, clicking risk multipliers. Again, it's very rarely a member of IT that clicks something that gets you ransomware. And I will state that despite what's happened with SolarWinds, most, I would say 80 to 90% of ransomware attacks still come in through email. So despite what you've seen on CNS and MSNBC, don't get me wrong, the SolarWinds is bad. That's not where ransomware comes from. That was a nation hacker, not a for-profit group. We expect magic from users, though, right? We couldn't do their job. I couldn't run payroll. I certainly couldn't do HR. I'd have to fire myself. But you expect them to do yours. IT pros can usually, when you look at an email, you can tell a link straight away. It looks dodgy based on the email, based on the spelling, based on the grammar. It's a bit ironic that IT people are actually grammar police now, because we're all notoriously bad at grammar and writing and spelling. And users rarely are able to tell, and they might be able to tell if a screen pops up and says your computer's being ransomware. At that point, they might figure out it was a bad email, but until that happens, they really just go on their merry way, keep going. Be aware though, awareness training it's not a panacea. You probably won't stop the attack. Again, it goes back to it's not an if, it's a when. But hammering home the basics over and over and over again can help. And it's not a fire and forget. You need to do this regularly with them and keep it short. The last thing you want to do is have all of your employees do a monthly 4-hour video about cybersecurity awareness, because then everyone just switches off and doesn't do anything. And you're starting to see it's beyond just email, which is phishing in this list. You've also got Vish and Smish, which I hadn't heard of until a few years ago. Vish is voicemail phishing, where they'll leave you a voicemail or call your phone and hope to get you to log them in or tell a password, pretend I'm from IT, that kind of stuff. The whole fake Microsoft tech support, that's phishing. And then you got smishing, which is SMS phishing, where they'll send texts trying to get them to click on links to reset passwords, etc., etc. So it's beyond just email. Again, your users are walking, talking multipliers, And COVID has just expanded the footprint. They're not always in the office. They can't always come and ask you. So train and attack. I'm more of a training person than an attacking person. The attacks can lead to a whole lot of problems, but we'll get to that in a second. But train them, right? Again, I want to stipulate again, it's rarely IT. And even if it is, we'd hide it. We'd frame some user. We'd figure out a way to deny it was us. um, but train your users, right? The way we recommend to our customers is do semi-annual training where all of your employees have to sit through these training videos. And it's automated. I'm going to get to vendors in a second. It's not like you have to create these. Do semi-annual 15 to 30 minutes. I'm more on the 15-minute side of this now, just so people do it. And again, they're not going to pick up a lot from a 15-minute video once. But if they're in your organization for 3 or 4 years, they've done it 8 times now. If you even get a 10% retention of knowledge each time they watch it, you have now increased their knowledge probably by 30 to 40% from when they first started. So it's incremental gains here. New hires, you need to set a baseline. Your current employees, if they've been here for 6 months, have at least done one semi-annual, and if they've been there for a couple of years, have been for a few. So new hires set a baseline, make them do the longer version of the trainings, which maybe do go into the details of phishing and smishing. And then you can attack. You can do it a simulated phishing attack. GoDaddy just got in trouble for this because GoDaddy right before Christmas did a simulated phishing attack with their employees, promising a $500 Christmas bonus, which I completely agree is a very shitty way to attack people. Everybody would click on that these days. But that being said, you can create emails that look kind of like from your HR, offer a pizza delivery store. One of my customers, or one of the people we deal with, they actually did a pizza delivery. Hey, click here to get a free pizza, and that is now forever known as Pizzagate in that organization. When someone says Pizzagate, that's what they mean. And you can remediate your users if they continue to click on what should be obviously bad links. But use this as a teaching moment, not a ridicule moment. I know of one organization that built a list of people who failed the simulated attack and published it internally to everybody. That's not the way to do this. You don't single them out. Don't vilify them, because the entire goal of all of this is that when they think they have done something, they have the trust to come and tell you and ask you what they should do or shut down. So the more you piss off your users and vilify them, the less likely they are to help you when they really need to when you really need their assistance and they really need your help. So the vendors, KnowBe4 is the big one. That's the one I see a lot of. It's very detailed. It's got lots of different levels now. As these little companies become big, they add all kinds of bullshit that you don't need. But KnowBe4 is still actually very, very nice. It's simple. It's easy to use. You're starting to see the big boys, the Barracudas, the Proofpoints, etc., start to look at this. Barracuda just bought a company called Fishline, which is now part of their ESS solution, their Barracuda Cloud, and it's coming along. It's just not really there yet. At least it wasn't the last time I looked, which was probably about October. So vulnerability analysis and patching. So if you can't stop it coming in, how do you stop it moving and attacking and vectoring all inside of your organization? Well, the first part of this is vulnerability analysis and patching, and really it's the patching side. And you're doing it badly because everyone does it badly. No one does this really well on a whole level, really. Because what is your most vulnerable, right? You can't. It's very difficult for organizations to sit down and list all the assets they have and then list all the assets that are vulnerable in ranking, mainly because they don't know what they have. Most organizations, I say, can probably routinely, find 80 to 85% of their assets, but there's probably maybe at least 5% or 15% that never show up on any scans, and they don't know it's there. It's behind someone's desk. It's in someone's closet. And it could be anything. It could be a smart thermostat. It could be we've just found a Windows 2003 server at a vendor, at a customer we didn't know was there. So it just pop up. They constantly pop up, and you don't know they're there. So if you have any of these, they're all vulnerable, and they're all vulnerable because everything is vulnerable. And some of the stuff you're probably patching, some of the stuff you can't, some of the stuff you can't. You can't patch Windows 2003. Um, it's very difficult to patch MS-XML, which routinely fails a ton of security standpoints. So this is why most organizations are doing it wrong, because they don't understand what they have that can't be patched. And if it can't be patched and isn't patched, it's vulnerable. So it's also more than Microsoft patching. A lot of organizations we walk into will ask the question, "Are you patching?" And say, "Yeah, we got a Windows Update server." Yeah, that's not patching. That might be patching Windows and Office, but you have thousands of other applications that are not being patched. It's multi-vendor. You need to do Acrobat. You need to do just go back to the list with Acrobat, Google, Firefox, Chrome, Java, all of this, WinZip, everything, right? 7-zip, everything needs patching. So it must be monitored too. So the way we do it internally, and some of our clients now do it, is it's a multi-vendor approach. So we use a product called Desktop Central for patching of supported endpoints. Now that's important because things like worse Windows Update Service and Desktop Central are going to tell you something's fully patched. That doesn't mean it's not end of life. I could have a fully patched Windows XP machine and it'll look green on my screen. Well, something else like Nessus, Tenable, actually Tenable bought Nessus years ago, and a product called OpenVAS, which is an open source community edition, can scan all of your endpoints and tell you that, yeah, it's patched, but it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable because it's end of life, and it's been end of life since 2013, as an example. So that's why organizations do this wrong, is they're just concentrating on patching. They're not concentrating on things that can no longer be patched. Expect some effort. It's not easy. If it is, you're probably doing it wrong. If you're not looking at it, it's definitely not working. And this is the number one problem we see with patching is an organization will set up Windows Update, they'll fire out the group policy for a couple of weeks, they spot check and everything looks fine. And then never look at the Windows Update server reports ever again. So you have no idea that 50% of your endpoints are failing because the Office 365 update is 4 gig. And they can't download 4 gig over a MiFi connection in a police car, for example. Some things like that. The other thing to be careful of is, right, problematic is things like Java, where a Java patch can break all kinds of stuff. You still see an awful lot of Java 6 out there because some organizations believe that Java 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 break the encryption, which is kind of true. They enhanced the encryption, which made Java 6 break, but you can tweak it so that Java 8 can still kind of behave a bit like Java 6. It just depends on the vendor. But that's the kind of stuff that sits out there for years and years and years and years and never gets patched. And Java's everywhere, but you don't realize it's part of business objects. It's part of Crystal Reports. If you have a Crystal Reports 7 or 2010 or 2013 instance, that's got unpatched Java in it from the day one, because that's the way these things go. The other thing that you need to do with these is automate. Anytime a human touches it, it goes wrong. So automate, automate, automate. But conversely, monitor, 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 because when the automation breaks, you need to know why. And I've harped on this and I'll harp on it again. Windows updates is not the solution here. It is not. It is a panacea, and it'll give you a really false sense of security, and you will get whacked if Windows updates is your only thing you're looking at. So as an example, I'm going to show you Desktop Central next. It's from Manage Engine, who we use a lot of their products. They're very nice. I like them a lot. And there's a whole lot of information on this screen. This is a 325 endpoint, which is that middle circle. There's 325 endpoints here being monitored. This was probably just after a Microsoft Edge update came out, which I can see on the latest security news on the right at the top. That's why half my endpoints are now vulnerable or highly vulnerable. Again, a lot of information here. I can also see the top 20 breakdown of what are my most vulnerable applications. Well, VLC Media Player is on 8 workstations and is highly vulnerable. How many people do you know scan for VLC? Not many. And so that's the level of granularity you have to get in, because we're installing these things to make users be able to play videos, and we're not patching them. And some of these have auto updaters in them, but you can't trust the auto updater to always update. The second one in that list is Adobe Flash, which, because this was written in 2020, was still around. Because it's 2021, Flash is gone. I did see something interesting the other day, but I think it's is it Thailand? So some country has created their own browser to embed Flashback in it because none of their government sites work without Flash. So they've released their own browser with Flash enabled. Not quite what I would do, but there you go. Continue with Desktop Central. This is the automate part. So this is actually, I'm pretty sure this is a screenshot. I think it's the same organization. I think it's a screenshot from the same organization. It's the 325 endpoints. So we spend a lot of time breaking out schedules to patch things. So all your domain controllers aren't patched at the same time, right? You want to patch them at least on different days and probably overnight on different work days. So if something goes wrong, there's someone there on a weekday to fix it when they come in and not on a weekend. Things like that. And so from that standpoint, out of the 325 endpoints from that previous page, I would guess that close to 280 are automatically patched all the time. And the only ones that aren't are things like Hyper-V hosts and SQL servers and anything that's business critical, or servers that have to be logged on, which still irks the crap out of me that vendors write software that forces a user to be logged onto a machine so you can't reboot it. But that's the thing, is automate it and you'll find out. And all the greens are good. So you can see the automation's working pretty well. I mean, we've got the Windows, the Microsoft Edge update, which is causing, 102 endpoints in one of them to be out of whack. But for the most part, everything the third line down and from there is servers, and the servers for the most part are looking fully patched these days. So that's a big step forward from where this organization was when we started to help them. The second part of this is Tenable. So I know I found what I can patch and I've patched it. But what about stuff that can't be patched? What about stuff that is not an installable product that we know about, that maybe is a HP copier or a Konica copier that has a known vulnerability, things like that? Well, that's where Tenable comes in. And this really kind of can float some executive boats when they see the graphs here. This is a 90-day executive summary on the left, and you can see that yellow line is coming down, coming down, coming down, then takes a massive drop. That massive drop is probably them pulling 5 to 10 Windows 7 boxes off of the environment. Probably, that's my guess. And you can see the trends. And if you go, are you going the right way? Are you going the wrong way? Tenable, which again is Nessus. Tenable is a reporting solution for Nessus. Nessus itself can still be downloaded for free. It just doesn't give you all of this nice reporting stuff. That's what Tenable does. And here's the second part. Another part of Tenable is summaries by host and network. So on the left side, I've got my most vulnerable hosts. Not surprisingly, I think the most vulnerable host, which is that far left bar graph, I think that's a Windows 2003 server. And then if you look at the right bar graph, that's the most vulnerable networks. What you find here is generally the two big network segments here are probably server segments, the ones with the two big yellow bars. And that's because servers don't get rebooted every month, right? You may not do your SQL servers every month. You might not do your Hyper-V hosts every month, things like that. So that it's not unknown to see the server network segments be the worst in an environment. And that's what that shows. And then you can also use this as actionable intelligence to go down your network segments, because now you know with that third one, it's a /24 network, right? That's the worst at that point. Okay, let me go and concentrate on that this week or this month. And so you can kind of push these values down and know where to spend your time and your effort. You can also do it for free. This is called OpenVAS. It's really a community edition of Greenbone Security Manager. I think they're a German company. I've used this for quite a number of years when I was starting to get into this, especially internally in STS. This is still what we use inside of STS because it's so great. And it's free. It takes a bit of managing a bit, but it'll go and download the latest CVEs and it'll scan your whatever you tell it, a host, a network. It'll map it all out. It'll go find it and it'll tell you what's wrong. This is actually a scan last August of STS's DMZ. So a lot of the things you see in here are probably Linux issues that were in the kernel that have now probably been fixed and addressed. But you can do this for free. You pick it up, install it. You can download a VM of it, install it, give it an IP address, let it scan your network. As with most scanners, don't do it on a Monday morning at 8 a.m. You'll have a lot of users pissed at you if you do that. So you know, pick your times to scan, and just like the automation of the patches, the scanning, I wouldn't do it all at once. I would do my different network segments at different times or different days. But you can get stuff for free. Fantastic stuff. So if the antivirus doesn't stop it, and it's on the machine, what else can I do? Well, this is really where the rubber meets the road right here. This series of slides is what will save you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's a lot of effort, but it's entirely free. And it's using GPO tricks. Because malware runs in the user context. When some unsuspecting user eventually clicks on the link, that eventually downloads the malware, that eventually encrypts your entire organization, it runs in their user context first. That means app data. That means temp. Anything under C users is where all this crap runs. That's also where it all executes from. So, Microsoft says don't run executables out of the app data space. Well, they do. Microsoft's own Teams does exactly that. WebEx, any downloaded exe, any unself-packable extracting zip file or 7-zip, all run in here. So your job is to prevent any executable content that you don't authorize from running in this context. Again, it's called app data. It's not called app. So how do you do this magic panacea that fixes everything? It's two things, actually. The first is software restriction policies. It's part of, again, part of a group policy. This could and probably will save your organization and probably your job. Using this technique and the next technique is about as close to secure as you will ever get. You can whitelist and blacklist applications. It's not easy. This is the cost here, right? It's not a purchase cost. It's not an acquisition cost. It's a pain in the ass cost is what it boils down to. The first few weeks are going to be pretty hellish once you turn this on, because all kinds of shit that you didn't know was in your network pops up. But so you build out as many exclusions as you can. I'm going to show you a screenshot in a second so you can visualize what's going on here. Again, when you build this correctly, it does not affect program files. It does not affect program files x86. It does not affect program data. Although again, it's called program data. It's not called program. So, right, your mal verbiage. So you want to protect the user from clicking in something in their own user context that then goes away and starts finding file shares and recognizing the network, and then at some point decides to encrypt every file share this user can see. That's the job that this will do. It will stop it from running. Talking about the exclusions, you add exclusions for stuff you know. So Teams, Zoom, WebEx, right? All the stuff that you don't that runs inside of there that you can go find and see. You can add exclusions, and there's a screenshot of this in a second. You can add exclusions a couple of different ways. Digital signing certificates are the best way. You can then say to I trust Cisco's WebEx signing certificate, put it in there. Cisco's WebEx will always run at that point as long as that signing certificate is valid. And they change signing certificates about once every two to 5 years, depending on the vendor. So you only have to go and edit that rule every once in a while. You can add actual paths, but only do that if you have to, because the hackers know exactly where Teams is installed. Teams is installed in C, users, dedupe, app data, local, Microsoft Teams, right? So if I've put that path as an exclusion, me as a virus, as a malware writer, I'm just going to go and test all of these paths where you would have Teams, WebEx, blah, 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 blah. So do not use paths unless you absolutely have to, and don't use paths for the famous applications. The third way is what's called a hash, which is the thumbprint of the file itself. These are almost as good as digital signing certificates. In fact, probably better, because they're more granular. However, any update to that program via a window, via an application update. So if my Zoom gets updated and I've used a hash, that hash is now different. So my new version of Zoom will break and won't run. So that's why signing certificates are usually preferred over hashes. Hashes are good for one-time programs. If you've got something that a vendor gave you, you could add that in and you're good. Finally, I've got a screenshot of this too. Reporting helps. A syslog, a SIEM. You really need a SIEM for this, honestly. But if you only ever do one thing, this is it. This is the magic right here. If there is a silver bullet, this is it. I have just fired the silver gun with a silver bullet at you. You now have one job for the rest of your life, and that is to make sure this is in place everywhere you ever go. Again, it's not easy. That's the cost. So, as an example, here at the back, at the top left, is a group policy. This is a software restriction group policy. And as you can see, the first 7 to 8 lines are all the disallowed paths. So you're not allowed to run anything in percentage app data if it's an exe. If it's a 7-zip, if it's a zip, if it's a WZip, which is WinZip. I thought WinRAR was in there, but I don't see it. That probably was added after a fact. And so they're all disallowed unless there is a unrestricted allow for either a certificate, a hash, or a path. And so you can see right below the last disallow path, you have all of the certificates that this organization has loaded that lets things signed by these certificates run in one of those matching paths above. So even if Adobe installs an app data and has an exe, if it's signed by the Adobe certificate in there, it'll run fine. But no harm, no foul. It does not stop it running. It only stops stuff running that doesn't have a whitelist in this group policy. The forward, the big screenshot in the middle is actually the SIEM solution that goes away and runs a daily report on the blocks from yesterday. And this generates a help desk ticket of a help desk to say, hey, yesterday this user or this computer ran this executable in this location and was called this. It's been blocked. So we know it wasn't whitelisted. So now the question is, what was the use? It blocked it, which is what's supposed to do. But was this user trying to do something that was supposed to be allowed? I mean, it's called file extractor.exe, so it was probably a patch to some system, but you can then proactively manage this by going back to the user and checking. When you turn this on, you are going to see some really interesting shit in your environment. Things that you would not have expected users to do. It really is astronomical what gets blocked. And then the complaints you get about not being able to run EXEs right from what they've downloaded from the internet. The SIEM in this case, the report is actually Event Log Analyzer, again from Managed and Desktop Central, because I love their stuff. The second, right, so the first part of the secret sauce is software restriction policies. Very hard to implement. Well, I wouldn't say hard. It's difficult to implement correctly from the get-go. But after about 4 to 6 weeks, almost everything you want is in there. And you also need a SIEM as well to find out what's getting blocked. The second part of this golden goose that I'm about to give you is to disable scheduled tasks from non-admin users. So regular users don't ever need to create a scheduled task, ever. I mean, I've not found a particular reason why any user would ever need to create a scheduled task. And the reason this is important is because this allows malware to reboot and to survive reboots. So one of the first things a dropper does is it'll go and install itself into app data. Then it'll add a scheduled task so that when it's rebooted, it'll go and check, do I still exist in app data? And if not, let me go and re-download myself. So it's used as a dropper. So that's how most of this malware works, is a dropper gets installed like Emotet, which has been taken down, by the way, mostly we think. But the Emotet network used to be the dropper here. It would install and then go out and do something. It would go and get, then I'm either stealing data from my dropper or I'm going to go and get something else like a Ryuk executable. And Ryuk is what does the ransomware. So this is how these things work. It's multiple executables coming down. So if you can prevent them from, one, running at all, which is SRP, and then two, from being reinstalled over and over again, this solves your problem at the closest level to the user that you can get. And I have never heard an argument against disabling user tasks, a valid one. So tertiary, but not as important, but still worth doing, is to implement internal code signing. So the same thing that we're doing, I'll go back a bit. The same thing, I went past, sorry. The same thing we're doing here with code signing certificates for Adobe, AMD, Barracuda, we can also do for our internal programmers, and they're going to hate you for it, but it's good practice. You can then use a GPO to say only code signed by either a real signer or our internal CA can run. And this can stop PowerShell scripts in its stead. It might not fix WMI hacks, but it fixes PowerShell, which is what most of them do. because your goal is to prevent unsigned PowerShell scripts from running. Admins can bypass, which is either a good thing or a bad thing. So you need to also protect your admin accounts. We've started recommended any domain administrator needs something like Duo 2FA, where you have to actually approve the login of a machine. You can go down the trying to use ACLs to give specific rights and take domain admin use away, but honestly, you cause more problems than it's worth by trying to do zero trust at the OU level and at the device level. It's not a good place to be because you can't report on it. For people who don't support code signing, and by this I mean people who sell software to fire stations, because it's all written by firemen, you can actually create an OU that doesn't have the code restriction policy in it, drag a server or a desktop to the OU that doesn't require code signing, have the vendor do whatever they want, and then drag it back out of that OU again. So this will be ostensibly an empty OU, except when you're doing maintenance for people who don't do code signing certificates. The real answer there is to get Susan Bullock's re-education bat and take them out back and whack them around the head so they start signing their code. But there you go. Okay, so email, because I said earlier, most of it still comes through email, and it does. Filter everything, it's still really the most prevalent vector of attack. You just need to start buying the advanced features, because just simple spam protection is probably not doing it. If you're a big organization and you get a lot of attachments, you really need ATP, Advanced Threat Protection. It's usually an add-on license. And this, it's usually only in the cloud providers, because it uses cloud-based machine learning sandboxes to execute the things coming in that it's never seen before based on the file hash. So an Office file might get uploaded to the sandbox and executed to make sure what it does. A zip or an executable, when it comes in, will again, same thing, will be executed to see what it does. It's one of those things that doesn't seem to work for a long time and then really kicks in for about a week period as someone kind of attacks you, but it will prevent attacks that evade hash and signature based or at the email level. The second thing you do is disarming attachments. It's not common, unfortunately. The only real one I've seen that is really good is a product called Libra ESVA, Email Security Virtual Appliance. That basically yanks all of the active attachment out of emails, be it Word, be it PDF, all of the attachments, they're inert. So it basically neuters it, if you will. So here's an example of an ATP. This is Barracuda's cloud server. And this, we routinely check these. We check these about once a week, and you never see anything in them. And then bang, within 60 days, there were hundreds of attacks. And it'll tell you why it thought it was attack, and it just blocks it. And I checked this the other day, and again, it was back down to 1 in the last 30 days. So it's a bit like a bus, right? You're waiting for a bus and none come along, and then hundreds come along at once. It's exactly, it's like waiting at an airport for a Hertz bus. These things can really help, because the users, when they get it, they don't know it came through. It was secure. You've got all this filtering. It came through. So I'm going to click on it. This is the last layer of defense at the email level as ATP, and it really is kind of impressive what they're doing. The other advanced features, things like forensics. I know Proofpoint have this, Barracuda has this, where, and specifically with Office 365, is what I'm thinking here, where you got cloud-to-cloud connection, where you can say, where user might report a malicious email, you go look, and sure enough, it is a malicious email. Well, 400 people also got it. This just happens to be the only one that reported it. You can use the forensics tools to go and yank them out of all the mail files at the same time, and so prevent other people clicking on them. The other thing you see a lot is safe links. That's pretty common now. I don't know of a real security provider, not Spam Hero, because Spam Hero just really just spam, but the Barracudas, the Proofpoints, they all rewrite URLs for scanning. So that's supposed to take you to a security page to scan the page. I got to say, Barracuda looks a bit too fast, and I've never seen Barracuda report that it's found a bad page. So I'm pretty suspicious about Barracudas. Proofpoint works, and so does Libra's. And somewhat ironically, it mangles the URL, so the users can't tell if it's bad. So all that money you've invested in know before now becomes a bit more difficult, because they can't look at the URL, because the URL is called CUDA link or something like that. Again, I mentioned AI and machine learning. That helps spot phishing emails. So Apple emails that are not from Apple, Amazon emails that claim to be from Amazon but are not from Amazon. So, for example, the CSS may load from Apple, but the form submit goes to iasahacker.com. Then something's a bit weird, right? The current ML machine learning now can spot stuff like this. And that's kind of the next iteration of this is making sure it's all correct. Again, I don't cover it in here, but you really want to do DKIM filtering as well. Domino can't do it yet on the outbound or the inbound, but it's coming. But all of these big providers can. Any of the edge solutions can do DKIM now. A free tip: block every single Google form, all of them. If you only, again, from an email standpoint, if you only learn one thing, this is it. Google need to be taken out and punched in the throat for what they're doing here. They're basically allowing malware writers or phishing emailers to hide the code behind a Google form button that then submits to a different site that's not Google. So when the email comes in, the SFP is good because it came from Gmail. The DKIM is good because it came from Gmail. The scanners look at it, don't see anything bad because it's not in the form, it's in the button that's in the form. So why Google allow this is beyond me. But at least as of the last time I looked, we were stopping on one environment that had 500 mail users in Barracuda. We were stopping about 50 of these a day, which is a high number for a 500 user environment. So that just go and block all Gmail. Sorry, not all Gmail, all Google Forms. And there's a word in the form that says create your Google form or also use Google Form. You can base it off that. That's what we did here. It's stopped thousands over the last couple of months. Edge firewall, which is the Maginot line of IT. For the people who don't know what the Maginot line is, that's what the French built after World War I, and it went all the way along the border of Germany and France to stop Germany reinvading France. Except when World War II happened, Germany didn't go through France, it went through Belgium and bypassed the Maginot line. So they went round the firewall, they didn't go through it. And that's sometimes what we have with the edge firewall, especially with cloud systems now. You can go around these things quite easily. Firewalls are firewalls. All your eggs are in one basket. Pick your vendor very carefully. And if you have Cisco, patch very regularly. Cisco's ASEs have patches all the time. Audit your rules. No one ever does, but go dump them every couple of years and take a look at them. If you can do capture ATP and IPS and botnet and geo, buy the license, turn it on. It will save you buku dollars later on, especially IPS and actually capture ATP as well. So I'm going to show a screenshot of capture ATP in a second. But so when it's coming through email, ATP on the Barracuda does that. Well, what happens if I go to it from a website? Oh, and then it's a bit different, right? Then it's through my firewall or my web filter. So that's what I mean by ATP here. That's the web kind of side of the filter. Log traffic, again, you're probably to seam to make use of this and segment your traffic on VLANs. And the one thing I see all the time is you walk into places and they have the Wi-Fi's on the LAN. It's like, you don't need your Wi-Fi on the LAN. What would you possibly need your Wi-Fi on the LAN for? Well, from an email. Okay, so punch through Exchange ActiveSync and you can get to your email. Well, what else do you need email Wi-Fi access for? Well, as it turns out, nothing, because nothing needs to be connected Wi-Fi to the LAN. If you have Wi-Fi printers, you're doing it wrong. So that's also a place, because these printers also never get updated, by the way, if you do a tenable scan. So here's an example of a Sonic Wall firewall. This is actually our firewall. It's the one sat right next to me with the ATP license installed. And I went and clicked on a PDF and it had never seen this PDF before. And it's not just my firewall, it's all of the firewalls, all of the capture ATP service on Sonic Wall's cloud. So it goes away and it downloads the PDF on the cloud, scans it and lets me know if it's safe or not. This is actually a really big deal because these UIs used to be awful and people would re-click and re-click and re-click, but now at least they put UIs in the way to say, hey, it's being scanned, hold on. I'm getting close, I'm speeding up. DNS, first easy step. Here we go, right? So remember how I said it's an onion. DNS filtering services. They have lists of known to be bad malware hosts. And if you use one of these DNS filtering services, it will not let you go to the URL that they know to be bad. Cisco Umbrella is the famous one. Web Titan is probably the better of the two and also cheaper. They're both paid. OpenDNS, which is what Cisco Umbrella bought to become Cisco Umbrella, is still actually free. So if you go go looking, that's the actual still free open DNS servers, which if you point your router or your Active Directory DNS forwarders to these, this will filter out 80 to 90% of the malware URLs that the person can't even get to them because it just returns unknown host or 127.0.0.0, and your browser says, sorry, this page cannot be displayed. Cleanbrowsing.org, if you want to take it a stage further. So we use cleanbrowsing.org a lot on public Wi-Fi's, where you just don't want to stop malware. You might also want to stop porn or force YouTube safe mode, things like that. So the bottom two, OpenDNS and Clean Browsing, are ostensibly free, and you with Clean Browsing you can actually pay and get some more reporting options, a bit like Umbrella too. That's a good first step. I don't know why anyone would not do this on their home routers at all. Pick. Do you want security? Do you want porn blocked, or do you want safe mode? Right. Pick your IP address. Put it as your DNS forwarder. Bang, done. Mobile endpoints will become a bit more difficult. You can't really do them with the free solutions. You need to go and buy something like Cisco Umbrella or WebTitan, and that becomes more important with things like COVID, where everyone's working from home, so I can't control your home Wi-Fi router. So that enables you to do an extra level in there. That's where the paid solutions come in, is when you have a lot of mobile endpoints. Backup and recovery. Okay, so we've covered the 7 points of prevention. Let me reiterate: prevent, 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 prevent. However, if you only ever do one thing right, not ever do one thing, but if you only ever do one thing correctly, this is the one you've got to do. And this is it right here. In a nutshell, this is what you need to do. Do not put your backup infrastructure on the domain. You will get ransomware. Your backups will get ransomware. Your encryption keys to decrypt your backup will get ransomware. Do not install anything to do with your backup infrastructure on a domain ever. Never, 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 never. This one slide will save you $500,000. So what else? Well, okay. So let's talk about backups, because I'm gonna break a couple of people's faith here. Local disks, very, very fast. Fast backups, fast restores, keep recents. Yeah, if you need to keep things for longer, you can push them somewhere else. It's relatively cheap to add disk. It is susceptible to attack. Online storage can be ransomware. See the previous slide. Do not put your backup infrastructure on the domain. That will help reduce the risk of that. Also, don't allow your backup infrastructure at all to be connected to from the domain. The connection should go from backup to domain, not the other way around, ever. The domain should not be able to find it. It should be firewalled out the wazoo. You should never be able to get to it. So local disk, fast. Yes. Tape, reasonably okay speed and size now. Actually, LTO8s, I think, is 15 or 16 terabytes compressed. Somewhere in the region of 7 to 8 terabytes uncompressed, with a reasonably size, 10 to 16 size auto library. You've got a fair amount of storage there. You got 90 to 150 terabytes of storage in one 2U tape robot now. Much less risk of being encrypted because it's offline. How many script kiddies or even nation hackers are writing SCSI commands to load your SCSI quantum tape, find the tape it wants to do, and then encrypt it? Yeah, but they're not. So that's about as safe as you can get. Then it can also keep recents. Now, that controversial one, cloud. It's very, very slow restore. I'm not kidding. It really is. If you're looking to restore from a cloud, you are in deep, deep trouble. 10 terabytes to restore, which is not a lot of data. It sounds like a lot of data, but for organizations, it's not. 10 terabytes at 1 gig is about 24 hours. 100 terabytes at 1 gig is about 9 days. That's 9 days to restore 100 terabytes. And I'll tell you now, you're not going to get a gigabit. You're going to get whatever Amazon or whatever the vendor decides to throw your way. So if your plan to restore is the cloud, then you are going to be in a real world of hurt. However, that's not to say it doesn't have advantages. It can be made immutable, which means the cloud storage can't be changed. So I might throw up the Amazon Web Services, make it immutable. Amazon, nor myself, nor any hacker can change that for however many days I've made it immutable. I can also do long-term storage. However, what gets most people is when you are backing up to the cloud, you're sending incrementals. when you're restoring from the cloud, you're restoring falls, hence the horrendously slow speed, because you're used to it taking 5 to 10 minutes because you're throwing up last night's differential or incremental. When you're restoring, you're pulling down the entire VM. That is painful to explain to people. A simple file restore when someone's deleted something would come from the tape or come from disk. You don't want to go to cloud for this. The other dirty little secret for cloud is it's expensive. It's generally not expensive for backups. It's usually pretty cheap. But for restores, it can get really expensive for restores. Amazon does not mind you throwing data into their cloud. They will quite happily tax you out the wazoo to get it back out. The joke in the industry is there's more than two ways to be attacked by a ransomware. One is the ransomware people wanting the fee, and the other one is that Amazon want the fee to get it back out. So, I don't know who you'd pay, but you're going to pay one of them. And cloud should not be your primary source of restore. So why? So here's a free tip. Build for restores, not for backups. 10 gigabytes is literally 10x faster than 1 gigabyte. It's actually not really. In real life, it's about 5 to 7. But still, a 10 terabyte on a 10 gig now is 4 to 5 hours. You have slaughtered some of the times off this. You can go down to very, very, very speedy recoveries if you have to. Again, backup servers should not be discoverable. You will need a lot of local storage. I'm not going to lie. But really, it's not like we can't buy 10, 12, 14 terabyte drives now, because you can. As a really, really dirty rule of thumb, for every 30 to 45 days of on-prem you want to keep, two terabytes per backed up host is a good average. That doesn't mean every host is going to take 2 terabytes, because they don't, but you're going to have some big ones like file shares offset by some small ones like domain controllers. And so if you're looking for a rule of thumb, that's about right. If I was backing up, if I'm backing up, 40, 45 VMs, I'm looking at about 90 terabytes at the least, at the minimum, for on-site storage. A Veeam example, again, right? I'm going to do tertiary. Veeam is the one we use the most. Pick your vendor, but Veeam has it hands down, right? I'm going to back up 3 different places: disk, tape, cloud. Also, plan for the disaster. So if I've been whacked, my backups might still have the ransomware or the malware in its inert state, right? They're sitting there for 40 to 60 days, hoping that your clean backups have expired, so now all your backups have ransomware in it. Well, Veeam has added what's called Veeam Secure Restore, which can scan the backups as you restore back. And that means they're using virus definitions from today, not virus definitions from 60 days ago. So they can at least flag the potential virtual machines or the potential files as you are restoring them that you might not want to restore. Also, figure out when it should be done first, right? Domain controllers, critical infrastructure, so security virtual machines. I routinely see semantic endpoint protection and McAfee and Trend management servers get encrypted. So they're one of the first things that we have to restore. And then also the critical infrastructure, right? SQL, IIS, what else have you got going on that needs to come out first? So make sure you know that before you start restoring, because that might also change how you do your backups. You might change your backups differently so your restores become easier. Also, make sure to back up your config files. This is a big deal. No one ever does this somewhere off host. So Veeam, for example, you turn it on, it backs its config up every day, which is the catalogs. The last thing you want to do is have your Veeam server whacked and have to recatalog all of your tapes and have Veeam do it, because that'll take at least a handful of hours, if not a handful of days, to do by itself. So back up your configs. So if your backup infrastructure does get whacked, you can restore that and then restore the config, and you don't have to recatalog everything. Fitting it all together, remember about the onion skin earlier. This is the onion skin right here. Multiple layers, multiple different functions, multiple different vectors in. Once you put it all together, this is what it looks like. At least 4, sometimes 6 layers, protecting the user ostensibly from themselves. And that's what the job is. And that this is a very good example of that. That how do we layer all of these on? And you would hope and pray that all of these layers, that prevention, stop it from happening. And again, if it doesn't, then I've got my backup and recovery. Again, seven bullet points on prevention, one bullet point on backup and recovery. So again, prevent, but plan to recover. Every dollar in prevention is going to save you thousands of dollars in recovery. I can't stress this enough. And it's not just what you know you'd lose, like hardware and software and licenses, but if you have an organization of even just 100 people and they're incapable of doing their jobs to 100% for 6 weeks, do the math on the sheer amount of person hours lost because of that. I cannot stress enough how much it will cost. And once you've been hit, you will end up spending buku amounts of dollars in recovery and in prevention after the fact. So why not spend the dollars now before you need it? And the other word of warning is once you get hit and people start to find out, you will get a lot of salespeople knocking on your door promising to send you the latest and greatest, hint hint cough cough, carbon black, that'll stop anything, and it won't. An attack could be a generating event for you. Make sure you've documented that you're telling your management and your budgetary control people that this needs to be done. It needs to be done. Needs to be done. Needs to be done. And remember, your backups are only as good as your last restore. Restoring a 10 terabyte file or VM for the first time ever can be kind of nerve wracking, especially if that's being corrupted and you don't know if the backup is corrupted. So, do a test restore every once in a while and make sure what you think you have in there is in there. Again, I want to reiterate, it's not if, but when. And even though you've been hit, it's still when again. It's over and over again. These things are moving at light speed because of users. And you've got to protect them from themselves. We're getting to the end now. So how can has STS help? Well, we know. We know all of this stuff. We can let you know too. It's a bit of a shame that it takes a presentation like this to get some people familiar with the concepts and even some of the free stuff you can do. So case studies, one we designed, two we didn't. The STS design one, it was a ransomware. It happened on a Monday morning because that's what generally happens. Ransomware attacks usually happen on a weekend when no one's there to see all the disks lights spinning nice and bright. So when you come in on a Monday morning, you are done. You are already ransomwared. Recovery took about 4 hours. Well, I mean, it was probably a 175 person organization. Predominantly was their finance system that was nuked. We recovered in 4 hours. We lost about 1 hour of data. I was 220 employees. I already wrote down there. And we lost about 1 hour of data. So with sufficient planning, you can recover pretty quickly. STS not involved. This is again about a similar number of people, 230 employees, a ton of data loss, and it took it's really 6 weeks to recover. It's not 3 to 6; it was actually 6, and even then it was still appearing 3 to 4 months after the fact. It was still a bit whack-a-mole with the Ryuk kept appearing. And then there's one that is still going on, is 8 weeks. They're probably way past 8 weeks now. They're probably on week 8, probably weeks 12 or 16 now. They had Veeam as well. However, their Veeam was predominantly going to the cloud. So their recovery is taking a long time because they're having to pull everything off the cloud. And that was 1,000 employees. And that's a big deal when you are multiple months into a recovery for 1,000 employees. That is a massive loss of money right there. What else can we do? We know the products, we know the services, we have the knowledge, right? Products that fit your budget, that maybe even no cost or no cost. VirusTotal, Open DNS. Not every latest and greatest is actually the greatest. We can kind of point you in the right direction. I'd never say don't use Veeam. I'd always say use Veeam. I'd always say use Bitdefender, and I would probably generally say don't use Carbon Black. There you go. Everything else is for debate. Also the why, right? You're going to invest in this, but is it going to be before or after, right? Do it now. Do it while it can still help you, not after the fact. And then the how. Don't be like the fireman. Don't put the hose protector on the railway line and hope that the train is not going to cut your hose in half. Right? Learn from other people's mistakes. We see other people's mistakes all the time, and we learn from it, and we can help you learn from it. And you don't know what you don't know. I don't usually create, quote Donald Rumsfeld, but unknown unknowns. Exactly right. And then the products, right? We generally don't sell anything we don't use. That's pretty much true for STS since we started. But these are all the products that were mentioned in this. Most of them we sell, some of them we don't. And that's where I would start. I would start looking at this list and kind of go from there. And then what services, right? Patch strategy, we do this a lot. Configuration reviews, you're not looking in the right places. And if you are, you're not seeing it. It's like me editing my own blog post. I see typos months after. That's the same thing with configuration reviews. Gap analysis, that's the big one. And recovery planning. Recovery planning, yes, because no one plans to recover. They all think it's going to happen. No, you need a plan for it. And with that, I will leave our details up there and I will open it up for questions. I went 15 minutes longer, which is a bit less than I think I went the first time. So I do apologize for that. But if anyone has any questions, as Lisa likes to tell people, this is when it's free. So anybody? If you're all muted, by the way, so if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, you can. And if not, if you want to put it in the chat, I don't know where the chat is now. I've lost my chat. Oh, I see the chat. Oh, I don't see anything in it. There's nothing in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to presume if no one has any questions, well, Graham's just unmuted himself. So Graham, do you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I want to back up what you were saying about the what was the tool for the employee education, the phishing attacks and stuff like that. I've got a customer that's used that tool.
No, before.
Yes, and I can vouch for the fact that it is excellent. And you were talking about don't shame people. The client that I have that's used this, they do it quarterly, and what they do is they report just the general statistics. So what percentage of people actually clicked on the phishing attack. But one interesting thing that they do on top of that is they say how many people in the executive team got caught, and not who, but it's really cool because it illustrates to the staff that everybody's vulnerable, and it extra motivates the executive team to be watching for those phishing attacks. I will say that the test emails that they send out are just so blatantly obvious. It's they've got to go back and make it look really, really tricky, because those are the ones that people need to be paying attention to, right? So all good stuff. I also smile at the fact this is a customer that has chosen to move off of Domino and put in the entire Google suite. So when you said don't use Google Forms, I literally just got an email with a feedback that's in a Google form, and I just smiled.
Yeah, I mean, you basically just got to filter out any. There's a phrase. I'll have to go look at it, but I think it says create your own Google Forms, and you just need to block every single email that has that phrase in it, and your life gets so much easier. It's shocking how much crap is coming out of Google Forms.
Yeah. So anyway, good stuff. Thank you.
Most of those forms are kind of time wasters anyway, right? So.
Well, yeah. And I see Miss Mahoney had unmuted. So does she have a question? I guess that's a no. And Mr. Kenner has unmuted too. Do you have a question, Pat?
I was just going to say that we have no before, and I don't even think it's fair sometimes what they do. I was looking at some switches over the weekend, and then the next weekend I get an invoice or a confirmation for the switch that I ordered, and I didn't order it, and I was pissed off and clicked on it, and I made the clickers list that month. So.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit tricky. And for anyone that has a filter that does web URL rewrites, it becomes even kind of more tricky because, sometimes you're putting the filter in to say, don't even rewrite them. So they come in and the users can, sometimes we'll spot them back. Going back to Graham's point about the executives, it is true, right? I mean, the higher up the food chain you go, the more susceptible they are to doing what I would consider dodgy behavior. And at least it's not an executive division of one. Otherwise, you could tell who exactly clicked on it. But it is a valid point. It's showing everybody, look, yeah, we're getting, if you can get less than 15% click rate, or you can get below 7, you're doing really, really well. By the way, that's about the historical numbers you'd see between 7 and 15 are clicking the link.
And Darren, Terry said her mic's not working, but they also use Know Before and good reviews.
Okay, yeah, it's up there.
And that's actually not something we sell, right? So that's
It is not. Yeah, we don't sell
this
that.
is not part of the sales pitch, but
No.
you know, we want all of our clients to be happy and taken care of, and so we'll throw you all the good stuff we know about.
There were a lot of customers of KnowBe4 that have even never ran, I wouldn't say a campaign, but even the training, have never done a campaign of a training, or did it once and never did it again. It's one of those things that you have to do on a regular basis. Maybe not the campaign to a certain extent. So, you know, if I'm doing a campaign every quarter, I know one's going to come, so I'm going to be extra vigilant. But at least the training, and then randomize, right, the campaign attacks. But again, it's a training. You want to drive home to these people over and over and over again, right? This, if it looks too good to be true, it is too good to be true.
Or too bad to be true in Pat's case.
That too, yes.
I didn't order any. Uh-oh.
So I'm presuming you didn't get a new Switch then, Pat?
I didn't.
So if there is nothing, no other questions.
One question.
Oh, go ahead.
One
Yeah.
question.
Yep.
If your company environment is fully cloud-based, there is no server, there is no firewall, there is nothing. There is a Microsoft cloud-based 365. Everything is on there. I mean, I don't work for them anymore. I just quit. But that was always a worry of mine, that this is somehow destroyed. And I always wondered how they would fix this, but thank God we never had anything. But yeah, how do you do that with a fully cloud-based system? How do you back up and restore and time and whatnot?
So this is a good question, Eberhard, actually, because remember, right, most of the cloud providers do not provide out-of-the-box backup. They provide out-of-the-box high availability, which is different. So while you can buy Office 365 licenses, and that's the one I'll talk about because that's the one I know, you can get extra add-ons for Office 365 for long-term storage, especially if you're a government agency as well. They'll usually throw that in for free. You really need something else, because again, I go back to, you need a heterogeneous environment. So Microsoft Office 365s protect their spam filters. They're okay, but when you hear me talk about a security layer being okay, that means it's pretty crap. Because you want great in your security layers, you don't want okay. So the first thing I would do in a cloud is I'd say, okay, yeah, now we're not relying on Microsoft's filters. We are going to Barracuda Cloud, then coming into
We
Office
added
365.
Barracuda to it, yes.
There you go, because the exact same reason. And then also the other thing I'd add something like Barracuda or Proofpoint Cloud to is for backup and recovery, right? Because like you said, if it's on the cloud, how do you back up? Well, you need something like Barracuda ESS backup, which comes in and sucks all your Office 365 data out and puts it on their AWS instance. That's the way I would do something like that. From a patch perspective, you know, I could make the argument that even in all cloud, you still need to be managing patches, because it's your endpoints are probably so far off the reservation because there's no domain that you still need to manage that somehow actively. And something like a Manage Engine Desktop Centric can do that. It doesn't have to be on the domain. It doesn't have to be on the network to be patched. And that's where I would fill that little piece of the gap to at least do reporting on the endpoints. Because at some point as well, I probably also have to log into the endpoint to help install or manage stuff. So you need another product for desktop management on top of that.
Yeah, they never patched anything. I noticed that.
Yeah, that's how you get in trouble right there. Right, that's an Equifax or a Home Depot problem right there.
But then again, there were some computers attacked, and then their internal they sent emails around, thousands of them, to other members of the company. But that was never a big deal. We just cleaned up the email server, changed their password, and everything was fine. If their own computer is infected, we somehow didn't care.
Which is ironic, because where are you creating these documents that might be running your multi-million-dollar business on your, right? I mean, this is the thing. Where is, and I will say the ransomware writers learned pretty early on that hitting an individual computer is not a way to make money. Hitting an organization that has a file share is. But if your organization is completely cloud-based, then hitting a given desktop is a pretty good way of nuking them, because they're probably using OneDrive, and they may even have the SharePoint feature where it adds the folder to OneDrive. So if I can get in there and I can start encrypting that stuff, I have hurt you just as much as I have if you have a SAN and a file share.
Yeah, I guess they were lucky.
Well, and that's the truth, right?
So far.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, Darren,
Hi, Lisa.
remember last time we did this and it went 90 minutes? And I said, hey, when we do it this time, we should just schedule for 90 minutes. And you said, nah, I'm going to do it in an hour.
No, I didn't say that. I said no, because no one will turn up for a 90-minute webinar.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate your time and hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, we got the contact information there. So feel free to give us a shout. We're always happy to help.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Will you send out the link for this so we can download this later?
Yes, give me a week or so because it'll take a while to persuade Darren to upload the slides and give me the video and get the email out. So it'll take longer than it probably should, but I'll go over to his office right now and ask him to do it. So we'll see
Because
what
nobody
mood he's
talks
in.
faster than Darren, and I need to re-watch this to write down the details.
Well, and you got to translate it. He's still got some of that British in there.
Geordie?
Schedule.
Geordie.
You said
Not
schedule and
really.
you said something else in British. Well, and then there's also a thing you do from time to time where you take like the letter from the second word and put it at the beginning of the first word. And so there's like a special level of Darren encryption too.
That's called English.
I have spent a many of hours with Darren. I understand him by now.
Maybe you can explain him to me then.
Yeah, right.
All
I just
right.
I don't have to listen to my Monte Hoople this weekend after I have a session with Darren.
I'm ending the recording now, so no one hears everyone picking on me.